What's up? I'm Josh, this is a bass lesson, and today you will learn to play this. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because I wrote this exercise for myself, I'm now sharing it with you, to develop more right hand dexterity when tapping, because a lot of tapping patterns rely more on the left hand, since that's what we're used to fretting with, like something like this. Something like that. It's great, it sounds cool, but I'm doing everything over here and then just adding one note with the right hand. So the job over here is not that hard. So I wanted to challenge myself to use more than one finger on the right hand, do multiple notes in a row. So that's what you will also be working on with me as we do this. And we'll also break down this chord progression so you can increase your neoclassical shred progression repertoire. Let's do it. All right, here we go. This is like pretty advanced unless you're much better at tapping than I am, in which case you should have an easy time with it. But I found this challenging at first. So we're gonna go through this bar by bar, starting with bar one of all places. So our pattern here is index on the left, left pinky, and then right index, right middle, and then back down the way we came. So left index, left pinky, right index, right middle, and then pull off, pull off, pull off. So the mechanics here are challenging because there's a mix of taps, like actually initiating notes from scratch. There's a mix of taps that are more like hammer-ons where we've already got a note resting on that string. And then coming back down, there's pull off, pull off. So there's a lot going on with the coordination. So index, pinky, index, middle. And then when we go to bar two, in the transitions between bars, you kind of have a choice of whether you want to pull off to that note, which is tricky because you have to go tap, 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 pull off, pull off, pull off to a shift. Or you can just tap that first note of bar two. So tap, 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 hammer, hammer, sorry, pull off, and then tap the B natural, tap, 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 pull off, pull off. Okay, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we got the fingering for bar one. Bar two, same fingering in the left hand, index, pinky, but then index, ring in the right hand. So we're working the middle and the ring in this progression. So index, pinky, index, ring, pull off, and then you can either hammer that on fresh or do a pull off from your previous note. Index, pinky, index, middle, same thing. Bar three is the only fully repeated bar. So bar three is the same as bar one. And then here's one of the harder parts. We're gonna go from this E flat to tap an E natural on the G string. So you gotta get from here. So you might need to work that transition a little bit. And then in bar four, we get index, pinky, index, ring. It's actually the same pattern that we play in bar two, just moved up to the C7 chord instead of the G7 chord. And then again, we get to bar five, and we can choose to freshly hammer on that first note or pull off from the previous note. And then this pattern on the F chord is the same pattern we play on the C minor chord. So it's just index, pinky, index, middle, pull off, and then we're gonna go to a D7 over F sharp. And again, this is the same pattern we play on the G7 chord and the C7 chord, index, pinky, index, ring, just on a different chord. And then here's where you're really gonna hate me. We're gonna go to a C minor chord over G, so you have to get from a G to a C in your left hand, which you might hate, but that's just what we're working with today. So index, pinky, stretch. If you need to, you can do this with a shift, it's just tricky. Index, pinky, index, middle, and pull off, and then here's the other part where you'll hate me. You have to get from this note to a nice fresh tapped note on the F on the 10th fret. So you have to work that transition too. And then in the last bar we get index, ring in the left hand, and then index, ring in the right hand, which is stretching a minor third from the B to the D, so that'll be a little stretchier than anything else we do in the right hand in this, and then we're back to the beginning. Okay, so rewind if you need to walk through the fingering again. I'll spare you having to hear it again if you don't want to. So to reiterate the important things you're thinking about to technically pull this off, besides just getting the right fingerings and getting enough force on the taps, by the way, is another challenge of this. If you're new to tapping, one of the harder things about tapping is just getting the notes to be the volume you want them to be, because most of the time when we play notes, you pluck them, so this hand is used to calibrating volume in a certain way. Now it has to do it in a totally different way, and your left hand has to do volume as well, so it's hard. So you're thinking about that. You're also thinking about at the beginning of each bar when we're switching patterns, whether you want to pull off to your note on beat 1 or just tap it fresh, which is going to give you a stronger downbeat. But you can play with both because this is really more of an exercise. I don't know when you're going to perform this, but you can if you want to. Just send me a video. Tempo-wise, you could work this up to wherever you want, but I set our goal at 140 beats per minute as eighth notes, which is, I would say, kind of a medium goal. You could go slower to work the coordination better. You could go faster to just start working your speed. But here's what 140 sounds like. Obviously, that's going to be too fast for you to play along with right now if you're just starting on this, but you can use the YouTube speed controls if you want to slower play along, but you can also just do it with your own metronome. I just noticed a cool thing that I've never really heard anybody talk about when teaching tapping, but I'm doing significant muting work with my right thumb to keep because we're not using the E or the A string for this whole line, so I'm doing this. I'm resting the tip on the A string and further back on the thumb on the E string. And I'm sliding that around as I move my right hand tapping fingers. The same way I would if I was doing standard alternating plucking technique and maybe plucking on the G string. I would rest the tip here on the back of the thumb, further back on the E string. If you don't do that, you're going to get a lot of E and A string noise on this line because you're not using those, unless you cheat with a fret wrap. But come on, we don't want to cheat, we want to use our hands. Okay, so that's all the technical stuff we'll talk about. Let's break down the harmony in this line if you're interested, which I hope you are, because that's my favorite part of coming up with exercises like this, is trying out chord progression ideas. So this is all pretty like Baroque, neo-baroque, kind of Bach meets Yngwie Malmsteen kind of vibe. Chord progression stuff. We're starting on a C minor chord, but since we're pretty strongly emphasizing that flat 6 note, which is part of the C Aeolian scale, I called it a C minor flat 6 chord just to indicate in the chord symbols that we are indeed playing an Aeolian thing and not a Dorian thing. And then we play B, D, F, G. That's just a G7 chord in first inversion. And that's a very common voice leading thing, if you're not already hip to it, is going from the 1 chord to the 5 chord in first inversion, because then your root movement is half step from C, which is the root of the 1 chord, to B, which is the third of the 5 chord. So that's a cool way to smooth out your root to dominant kind of movement. Okay, so C minor at flat 6 to G7 over B, back to the same 1 chord, C minor at flat 6, to C7 over E, which again is just a dominant chord in first inversion, over E, E, G, B flat, C, which is the 5 of the 4 chord. So far in Roman numerals we have 1 chord, 5, 7 in first inversion, 1 chord to 5 of 4, which is a secondary dominant chord, meaning that we're going to F minor, which is the 4 chord, and so a secondary dominant is taking the dominant of where we're going to that's not the root chord. So 5 of 4 is the C7 chord, and then we get F minor, flat 6, which is kind of cool because that flat 6 on the F minor chord is a D flat, which doesn't really belong in the key of C minor. So it really teleports us into F minor a little bit more than if we just played the triad, because the F minor triad is all notes that fit in the C minor scale. Okay? And then the most abrupt chord change is that D7 chord, which is a 5 of 5, because D7 is the 5 of G, and G is the 5 in C. Music theory. Yeah, so what I like about this is if you look at the left hand in the F minor chord, on the F minor chord rather, you have F and A flat, and then on the D7 over F sharp, we have F sharp and A, so that minor third in the left hand just moves up a half step, and I think that that's kind of cool. And then that takes us to, your ear probably wants to hear like a G7 chord there, but we delay that a little bit with a 1 chord in second inversion, which is a common cadence in Baroque music and elsewhere, to kind of cheat. And you know, you're hearing the 1 chord, I'm playing G, C, E flat, but you don't really feel resolved until I go to 5, and then I play the 1 with the root on the bottom, and then it's like, aha. So the 1 in second inversion is like a hint at, hey, remember that 1 chord? Bet you want to hear that soon, don't you? So we have C minor in second inversion over the 5th, and then we take that G down to F and play a G7 in third inversion, and that takes us back to the top. In summary, if I just play the chords, we have 1, 5, 7, 1, 5, 7 of 4, 4, 5, 7 of 5, to 1 in second inversion, to 5, 7, to 1, or sorry, to 5, 7 in third inversion. And if you know enough chord voicings to play through this progression, that's also really fun. There's a few different themes in this chord progression. There's a lot of secondary dominance. There's also a lot of smooth root movement, because we go from the 1 to the 5 in first inversion, which is just a half step, back to 1, and then we go up a major third to the 1 in first inversion, and then it's just a half step to 4, half step to the 5 of 5 in first inversion, and then we're on G for the 1 in second inversion, and then down a whole step to the 5 in third inversion, and then our biggest jump is just a perfect fourth back from F to C. But other than that, it's pretty smooth root movement, thanks to all the inversions in the progression. Okay, you did it. Sorry if I dropped you on the theory stuff or the technique stuff or anything. This is a very advanced video, so if anything didn't make sense to you, please don't feel discouraged. It's just an advanced video. It's not your job to be prepared for every single video in the world. But hopefully it was the right level for you and you got something out of it. And there will be a PDF of the sheet music and tablature available to my patrons on Patreon, as well as a bonus video where I'll talk some more about this exercise and how to take it further. So you can check that out on my Patreon page. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.